Hello, I'm Matthew Eyre and I'm going to be deconstructing Dishonored. First of all, Dishonored is a first-person action-adventure game with stealth elements that allow the player to choose how they want to play. You play as Corvo, a falsely imprisoned guard to the Empress, who is framed for her murder, and you must clear his name. The player can choose whether to go through the game lethally or non-lethally, and whether to go through without ever being seen, which in turn can affect levels later on. The game is made up of different missions that take place within the story mode. There is no multiplayer component to Dishonored, but the game mechanic's flexibility allows for replayability to find other ways of playing. Dishonored can appeal to various types of gamer, from mid-teens onwards. Casual and average gamers can easily jump in with its easily learnt controls and premise, and can have fun playing in whatever style fits them. For the hardcore crowd, there is a lot of hidden depth to how you can combine certain equipment and powers for interesting effects, and the option to play to different extremes, like without ever being caught and never killing anyone, which will appeal to completionists, but is by no means enforced. The dark steampunk art style also appeals to people looking for a game that is different from the norm. The game's objectives are heavily centred on the story, but the player can choose to find collectibles and items off the main mission that will allow them to improve their equipment and powers, or to open up more ways of completing the main mission. The levels the missions take place in are made up of small self-contained areas that can be navigated and completed in different ways. One example of this is the player can choose to sneak into a distillery by moving around on the rooftops to avoid detection, or going on the ground and fighting the thugs that patrol there. The developers of Dishonored, Arcane Studios, discovered that their playtesters found they could combine their powers to advance through levels in ways they didn't anticipate. They realised that this was good complementary gameplay, so instead of limiting the player's powers, they changed the levels to embrace this. Missions can be failed by dying, which results in going back to a checkpoint, but there are many different ways of completing missions that, when done, can cut off other opportunities. Risk and reward is largely down to playing lethally or non-lethally, as this dictates what equipment the player will use. Non-lethal is quite limited in terms of powers and equipment, so it's up to the player to balance what their priorities are. Some objectives that promise better rewards may require the player to be undetected or give up on other potential rewards, which increases the difficulty of completing the objective. If a player wants to go lethal, they might want to be able to summon rats to attack their enemies, instead of dark vision, which allows the player to see through walls and plan how they want to attack. However, powers can be used creatively together to complement however you wish to play, such as using possession and freeze time to take control of a shooting guard and move him in front of his own bullet. Corvo can sprint, jump, climb, and swim to navigate the environment. The player can also pick up and use items they find in the levels, and peek around corners to see what's ahead without being caught. Dark vision allows for usable items to be highlighted in their vision, and an item called the Heart that can pinpoint where runes are in the level, and tells the player information about the world. Another important power Corvo has is a short teleport power called Blink, and that allows the player to quickly close in on enemies, or to quickly escape from combat, or to reach higher areas, etc. This power is the key power to Dishonored because of how easily it works with the other powers and equipment, and makes the player feel powerful. The HUD shows the player's health and mana, which is how the player power consumption is displayed. You can also see the currently equipped power, reticule, and you can see other objective and story information appear to the side. To change powers, the player can bring a wheel of their unlocked powers and weapons to choose and swap powers rapidly. To upgrade equipment and to progress the main story, the player is brought back to a hub area with familiar characters and some collectibles. Audio is not a major aspect of Dishonored, but the player can pick up on conversations between NPCs to discover information that reflect on the player's actions throughout the game, and to learn about different ways of completing objectives and finding different areas and items. Runes also emit a faint whisper to alert the player as to where they are, and the player can make noise to alert guards to different positions. Combat within Dishonored emphasises the tools that the player has and how they wish to use them. The player will always carry a sword which they can use to silently backstab people, or use to block and slash at guards when in direct conflict. However, the player also uses their left hand to use their other equipment like sleeping darts and grenades, whilst the power can be used at any time. Also, instead of lethal backstabs, the player can choke an enemy to knock them out. However, this takes longer to execute than a backstab. Corvo can crouch to limit how much sound he makes, and to sneak around enemies and transition into stealth takedowns. The player can manipulate some of the environment to help in different scenarios, like rewiring an electric gate to fry enemies and not harm the player. There are small puzzles in the form of finding an entrance into a certain area and finding locker combinations. Throughout levels, Corvo can pick up items to accumulate money, to spend on equipment upgrades, and find books and notes to find out more about the story and help with different objectives. Upgrades to your equipment can be simple, like how much ammo you can carry for different weapons, or allow the player to magnify their vision. On the other hand, powers have 2 tiers of upgrade that make the powers much more effective. One example of this would be upgrading the bend time power from slowing down time to completely freezing it. Enemies are varied between guards, overseers, and more. Guards are the main enemy the player will encounter and can be taken down by most means, unlike the tall boys, guards that use an armature that give them armour and a height advantage, which forces the player to think about how they should handle the situation. Enemies can make each other aware of your presence, and, when alerted, will attempt to ring an alarm for reinforcements and attack you in groups. They will also wake guards that have been knocked unconscious and throw objects at you when they cannot reach you. The ambient AI consists of citizens that walk and talk and interact in the levels to provide a sense that the city is alive, and rats that wander in the dirtier parts of the levels that, when in groups, will attack anyone that goes near them. There is also plenty of technology, like watchtowers that will fire mortars on a discovered player, and arc pylons that will destroy a player when they walk within a certain radius, but those can be manipulated to harm your enemies. Thank you for watching.